Hello strategy gaming enthusiasts, my name is AlzboHD, and in today's video we are going to save an ancient Andalusian dynasty from obscurity. But we're not going alone, and in this Secession series we will be joined by the social streamers Koifish, Chewy from Chubert, Ottawa Welshman, and Snap Strategy on a mission to save the Umayyad family from unlanded calamity. In effect, we will each produce one video per ruler lifetime, and this series will follow our family tree, with AlzboHD starting as MC. In history, the Umayyad dynasty was one of the oldest and most influential of the Islamic world, and once reigned as Caliph of the Rashidun Caliphate. In CK3, they reign over Iberia in 896, but by 1066 CE, they've been evicted from their emirate and exist only as impoverished peasants. Our campaign will start 35 years after the fall of the Caliphate of Cordoba, during a time that Iberia is anything but united. These are the stories of the unlanded Umayyads and their continuing quest to reclaim their family name, retake the lands of Islamic Spain, and boldly go where no mere emir has gone before. But before we get started, we'll have to enter the court of Emir Badish of Granada. This 64-year-old emir ruled over the fragmented ruins of Andalusia and was having doubts about his irrational and idiotic grandson and heir to the throne, the overly trusting Tamim Zirid. Naturally, he sought the counsel of his chancellor, Abd al-Aziz, who, unknown to Badish, was one of the only two surviving sons of the ancient Umayyad dynasty. Al-Aziz recommended the emir to grant him mandate over Malaga, as, he explained, he was a pacifist who believed in no cruelty and could provide guidance to his grandson. Badish agreed, and in 1066 AD granted the emirate of Malacca to Abd al-Aziz, who now held the keys of the southern counties. His family tree consisted only of himself and his dad, Ahmad, and thus begins our story of the Umayyad restoration and the sadistic machinations of the evil Wali, Abd al-Aziz. In 1066 CE, the 26-year-old Wali al-Aziz and his ambitious father Ahmad are the only descendants of the ancient Andalusian Umayyad dynasty. Al-Malik of Malacca is a stubborn, sadistic, and trusting 24-year-old with the blood of Muhammad, and nearing the death of his own dynasty, family and fertility became the first priority for his fiefdom. But given his meager income, Al-Aziz could only afford a harem of hunchbacks. Now every day was hump day, and with land in hand, Aziz was now also involved in Iberia, and as the court chancellor of Emir Badish, conspired to claim the throne for his own. At home, Aziz sought to spread his seed with his scoliosis spouse, but his hopes were doused, and it was time for him to leave his house to journey to Cebu. Who knew that this holy path would bless our Wali with a dwarven delight, and, for a time, everything was okay. But one day, our liege Badish was besieged by Al-Mansur, and it was time to make our move. The throne of our ancient home would be claimed in 1069 CE, and at long last, our first hunchback heir had taken air. It was thus time to put our faction into action, and with our capital a cemetery, Al-Aziz wrote a letter to his liege. Although war was soon in store, the Cordoban count had conquered our capital and had taken our hunchback heir, Hakam. Luckily for Al-Aziz, he had several spare heirs, but for reasons unaware, Al-Mansur invalidated our invasion. Our court had come under new management, but Badish was badly beaten and in need of our Sayyid. Indeed, he would get by with a little help from his friends, but with a siege time of over 3 years, he'd need some trebuchets to save the day. With his sons locked away, our family's future was far from certain. But Alhamdulillah, Ilke gave birth to Julabib, the first dwarven descendant of the Umayyad dynasty. Our Wali's weaponry now bore bombs over Granada. Badish unsuccessfully sought a peace, and the city was conquered in 1072 CE. Al-Aziz had brought his former master to his knees and forged a peace that granted him independence and sovereignty over southern Spain. Abd al-Aziz would now lead the independent Emirate of Granada and set about stripping his subjugated sultans of their titles. But Badish the Bastard would not bow down and instigated for independence. Resistance was futile, the emir was imprisoned, and it was time to assimilate an example. From henceforth, any dissent would be met by 10 hours of torture before tea time. How sublime! And Badish was burned at the stake while his son was forced to forsake the city of Granada. Our cruel crownhead consequently carried his court capital to Granada, and lacking funds, had a stable boy compose the chronicles of his people. But our sadistic sovereign grew bored of monotony and sought out distraction within his dank dungeon. The imprisoned dwarfess Wahida was what he needed, and after replacing his baby bride, now had the pride of being our sovereign's second short spouse. Somehow, our stable boy produced a perfect piece of propaganda, which would prove useful to the perverted plans of our madman. You see, Al-Aziz sought to cruelly cull his children until his stunted son Julabib stood to inherit, which was difficult when he was letting others walk all over him. From henceforth, our livid little leprechaun would let the hate flow through him, but back on the battlefield, the Emirate of Cordoba had declared war. Granada and Cordoba had finally come to blows, but Grenadine supremacy was all but guaranteed. In the space of 17 months, Cordoba was forced to concede nearly 400 ducats and relinquish their hold over Aziz's son and heir Hakam. Imprisonment is cruelty, and cruelty is haram within our house, so our charitable crownhead provided universal death care and vowed to beat his barons until their morale improved. Neighboring rulers universally approved and financed our philosophy, but there was to be no mercy for Murcia, and our monarch made off for Mecca. The militia of Murcia was murdered time and time again, and by 1080 CE fell to our Haji. But Al-Aziz was feeling ill at ease and opted to snort a bump of bubonic blisters before buying claim to the name of Cordoba, the ancient seat of the Umayyad dynasty. In 1080 CE, the drums of war would thunder yet again, and while our emir was no longer ill, Cordoba was killed in less than 10 months. As the new head of the Andalusian culture group, our cruel crownhead tortured these former rulers as a form of recreation, and instilled terrible traits in his stunted sons to further his own perverse pleasure. Abd al-Aziz was now the patriarch of his polity, and stripped his subjects of their land so that Cordoba could be returned to Umayyad hand. Potent propaganda was procured, and Al-Aziz dual-wielded these diaries to ensure the peaceful proliferation of his dwarven fixation, and thus Yawa was the first of many dwarves to obtain a domain. And speaking of dwarves, our deranged duke decided to conspire against his hunchback heir in an effort to care only for his dwarven descendants. These stunted spawnlings were to be educated in the way of arrogance, and Julabib was taught disdain for the plebs of Spain. Land was thus procured for these little lords, funds flowed freely from our followers, and would in turn finance the future of our fiefdom. It is often said that family is everything, but when your father is a sadistic prick, a chip off the old block takes on a more literal meaning. Our hunchbacked heir was murdered, and no mercy was given to Murcia. While infidels were felled in Malaga and a victory brought about peace, Al-Aziz was designing the future of his dynasty with a double dwarven betrothal for his favored son Julabib. The lines of succession were thus modified, and some sons died, and while man was now a man, it was his turn to pound sand. Murderer is such a strong word for the alleged actions of our faithful father, and in 1087 CE, Julabib had finally grown up as the appointed heir of the emirate. friendship would flow from father to son, but stress never changes, and Al-Aziz decided to kick back, relax, and listen to the sweet song of torture, while executing guests entertained and eased his nerves. But back on the battlefield, war was soon in store for the Wali of Yayan. People of verticality were shreked off our land, and imprisoned emirs paid off our emir so that they wouldn't disappear. In a little over a year, the tide had turned and Yayan was earned, and in honor of this victory, Julabib was forced to become our emir's entertainment. No one pitied the fool, and our heir's hat was exchanged in accordance with the decrees of Al-Aziz. Over the following years, fiefdoms were founded, poems were sounded, and our dwarven dynasty was expounded. By land and by sea, our emirate was expanding, our little lords were landed, and our sadistic sovereign became best friends with Emir Abu. Our treasury was out of the loo, our dwarven daughter obtained a financial breakthrough, and the death of our stunted shrew placed our fiefdom's future in jeopardy. The death of Al-Aziz's favorite hunchback of the harem sent our sovereign into a state of stress, and not even the propagation of his dwarven dynasty could ease his anxiety. These small spawnlings were growing up quickly, and Julabib the Jester sought to challenge his father to a game of chess. But despite the schemes of his little finger, Julabib was bested and took things personally, especially when Aziz sent the insult beneath his knees. When he wasn't roasting his stunted son and cowardly clown, our sovereign was demanding money from infants and blackmailing his best friend. These ill-begotten gains would in turn finance the creation of the Kingdom of Andalusia, and in 1092 CE, Malik al-Aziz had restored his rightful realm. 5 generations had passed since his dynasty had ruled these lands, and it was beyond time to restore the Caliphate's crest. Our newly crowned Caliph had bounteous loins and had single-handedly spawned 14 family members, but childcare is expensive, and thus our sadistic sovereign began blackmailing his wife and court for financial support. The monarch of Mallorca submitted to peaceful vassalization, more stunted spawnlings were granted lands, and our half-man heir could no longer bear his humiliation. This frustration led to a meltdown, and when forced to choose between his hunchback Habiba or dwarven darling, led to our liege's lunacy. To make matters worse, his best friend and ATM had passed away, forcing Aziz to blackmail other barons, and at death's door, he launched an invasion of Tula Tula in 1095 CE. His knees were weak and his arms were heavy, and 3 days into battle, our evil emir had died of cardiac arrest. Forever cursed with a disturbing mind, he was known throughout his lands as a raving lunatic, and the reins of the realm would thus pass down to his son and former court clown, Julabib the Jester. Our Andalusian nation was in need of Julabib, who had mastered many skills, like running away from his father. This 23-year-old manlet monarch is an angry, cowardly, and arrogant little looter, and with a son of his own, it was time for him to assume the Caliphate's throne. Inshallah, the social streamers will not be mad with this Iberian inheritance, and only time will tell if they can rise up and stand tall to the challenge of quite possibly the worst trait combinations in CK3. Stunted secession sovereign aside, Andalusia of 1095 CE is a strong sultanate despite its small size. Malik Julabib commands nearly 5,000 soldiers of the Andalusian Emirate, which stretches from Malaga to Majorca. Our monarchy follows the Muwalladi branch of Sunni Islam, ascribes to the Andalusian cultural group, and is overseen by the tiny house Umayyad. This formerly dead dynasty now counts 16 living members, 14 of which are Julabib's brothers and sisters, and espouses no cruelty. Julabib presides over a dwarven fortress in his court at Cordoba, but you shouldn't expect hospitality. You'll get nothing, and like it, but at least we're more civilized than Estonia. In the realm of peninsular politics, the Iberian struggle is slated to enter into open hostility, particularly with Julabib inheriting his father's invasion of Tula Tayula. Further abroad, the Cummans and Seljuks are set to juke with the Byzantines, while the Holy Roman Empire and France are weak and ready to be annexed by our ankle-biter autocrat. The world is divided between Christendom and Islam, though there are whispers that the Waldensian heresy is set to take out the papacy. Let's give a moment of silence to Malik Abd al-Aziz and his revival of a dynasty that was title-free for over 5 generations. But with an arrogant coward dwarf as ruler, the survival of our dynasty is no guarantee. Before ending the video, be sure to check back tomorrow and continue to watch the Secession series with the social streamers and heed the seed of our Umayyad. Over the coming week, the social streamers and Koifish, Chewy Shoot, Ottawa Welshman, and Snap Strategy will continue this campaign, so be sure to check their channels to keep up with the annals of our dwarven descendants. As always, if you'd like to see more content and want to help this channel grow, leave a comment to let YouTube know you're a map-staring pro. This video was sponsored by viewers like you, and if you want to support this channel, please consider donating to our Patreon, or donating basic attention tokens to AlzeboHD through the Brave browser. Ma salama, it's time now to roll the credits.